This is an N Scale T-Trak module. T-Trak is one of many modular railroad standards out there, but it is the simplest to manage that I'm aware of. I'm trying to learn how to do scenery for a model railroad, and I figured this is as good a way to learn as any. This project is very much a throw things in the general direction of the wall and see if anything sticks sort of deal. But with a little luck, I'll come out on the other side with a decent little slice of railroad. To start off with, the box of this module came as a kit from CMR Products' Tab Tech. There are many suppliers of T-Trak module kits, but I've dealt with CMR before and picked up a few module kits from them just to get started. They're tab and slot construction secured with wood glue. I painted the box an earthen brown and secured the Kato Unitrack to the box in the place prescribed by the T-Trak standards, 1.5 inches from the front edge of the box to the edge of the roadbed of the track. This gave me the blank canvas on which I will work. I'm aiming for a Florida swamp or Everglades scene. For water, I got a pair of small craft mirrors from Hobby Lobby. Off to a roaring start with the glue, aren't we? Actually, the vast majority of the materials I'm working with I got from Hobby Lobby. I glued the 2 mirrors into position and will build the scenery around them. Next up, I put some ballast on the track. Again, this is Hobby Lobby ballast. It didn't look like it was this color in the store, but oh well. The method is pretty simple. Paint some glue where you want the ballast to stick, dump it on, and sweep it into place. It won't all stick right now, but the final fixing will come later. Almost everything on the module will be loose until the final glue down. I think I should take a moment for a tip of the hat, this time to another train guy on YouTube named Jimmy. The DIY and Digital channel really served as a catalyst for me to try my hand at T-Trak modules. I'm following the methods he showed for his modules for the most part, but I'm also playing around with some variations here and there. That being said, the last time I attempted to do any sort of scenic work on a model railroad was when I was about 10 years old gluing construction paper over the scenery of my childhood N Scale layout in an attempt to make a road. I guess it is fitting that I'm going back to N Scale for this attempt at building scenery. Speaking of scenery, once I had the ballast in place on both sides and in the middle of the 2 tracks, I began to paint down some white glue for the application of the base turf layer. I'm just doing the slice of the module between the track and the front edge, as I'll be forming the ground behind the tracks before any turf gets applied. The turf itself was applied by shaking it onto the glue using the appropriate side of the turf container's lid. I let the glue dry for a while, then came back to the module. When I did, I started playing around with the places for some palm trees. Now these are rather cheap and plastic from the same craft store, but slapping some dull coat on them helped their appearance a bit. Ah, dull coat. Is there anything it can't do? Now to form the terrain behind the tracks. For this I tried my hand at using Sculptamold. It's made by an artist's clay company, but it's sort of a formable, moldable material that hardens like plaster. I've started by mixing up a little bit of the material. The bag says to mix 2 parts Sculptamold to 1 part water, so 2 shot glasses of Sculptamold were followed into a bowl by a shot of water. I know shot glasses aren't exactly a standardized measure, but I find them to be a handy container for my purposes. Now, if you'll pardon my arms being in the way, I tried to form the Sculptamold around the base of one of the trees, but I kept knocking the other trees over in the process. I used the Sculptamold to form the edges of the water feature mirrors. Then I used a plastic spoon I had laying around to try to smooth out the rough spots on the Sculptamold. I kept working with it until I had used up all of the initial batch. I let the Sculptamold dry a bit, and also took a new tact with the remaining palm trees. I separated them from their bases and glued the bases down with white glue. I then did several more batches of Sculptamold and made sure to work around the bases of the trees and keep the holes clear. I continued this until I had the whole back side of the module covered in Sculptamold. I let the Sculptamold dry a good while, then I painted the Sculptamold the same color I painted the module box. Once the paint had dried, this is what the module looked like. It gave me the impression of being a muddy mess. Appropriate for a swamp, perhaps, but I don't want the module to be all bog. I realized about halfway through the first batch of Sculptamold that I should have waited to ballast this side of the track until after I had put the Sculptamold in place. Nothing a little fresh glue and ballast can't put right, though. I began to paint white glue onto the terrain in preparation for adding the base layer of turf. I did make one mistake in the process, though. The process of laying down the glue was taking a while, and I thought it might be prudent to start putting the turf down on the areas already glued. It wasn't. I'll explain why in a moment. So here's where things got tricky. I find myself in the situation of having to paint glue down on the remaining bare areas without filling the brush and by extension the glue bottle with little green flecks. I think I did okay considering, but I just know that I will be seeing little flecks come out of that bottle in future. I should have painted the whole thing with glue first, then applied all the turf in one go. Alternatively, I could have applied the turf only on part of the existing glue. Oh well, what good is a learning project if you don't learn anyways? Another long absence to allow the module to dry, and here's where it sits. So far so good, I think. I want to make the module a lot more green, however. First off, I'm going to add a bunch of grass clumps I got from, you guessed it, Hobby Lobby. While the clumps are intended to be peel and stick, I chose to fortify that with white glue. I glued quite a few of the grass clumps around the edges of the water, or mirrors. The grass adds a fair bit to the mirrors, water. I decided to add some regular trees around the module as well. I used a small drill bit to open a hole in the Sculptamold, then glued the base of the tree into its hole. I had to learn the hard way, yet again, that I really should use a pin vise or small handheld drill instead of my bare hands to handle a drill bit of any size. A couple of the trees didn't like the idea of standing upright, so I used some small clothespins to get them pointed in the right direction. Next up, bushes. I took a piece of clump foliage, put some white glue on the bottom of the clump, and placed it wherever I thought it would look good. I then repeated the process again, and again, and again, and again, until I was satisfied with the number of bushes on the module. I also used the bushes to disguise the holes in the module for adjusting the set screws used to adjust the module's height. I next decided to vary the color of the ground cover a little. I filled a little plastic cup with green turf and tried to shake it into nice patches on the ground. For those who might recognize that cup, yes, it's a plastic communion cup I got from a church service. Waste not, want not, right? Looking at the module, I figured a few more bushes would be a good idea. Following that, I chose to add some darker, coarse turf. The idea here is to simulate weeds and undergrowth. I used the same application method here that I used for the green turf. At this point, I was out of ideas for scenery to add, so it was time to make it permanent. Fixing the scenery in place is a two-step process, and the operating theory behind it, as I understand it, is to first soak the scenery in isopropyl alcohol, then douse it with a half-water, half-white glue mixture. The runny glue will follow the alcohol deep into the scenic items, and once it all dries, the glue will lock everything down. I did the module front to back with the alcohol and watered-down glue, which some call scenic cement. Once everything, well, except for the rails themselves, of course, is thoroughly soaked in the scenic cement, all there is to do is wait overnight and let it dry. The final verdict will be in come morning. When I inspected the module the following morning, all I could say was that I was happy with it. Some of the colors seem to have been toned down slightly by the scenic cement, but otherwise I think it looks pretty good. For a first real attempt at model railroad scenery, I am more than satisfied. Now, the question is, can I keep it up and do a decent job on module number 2? While this video is fairly brief, I have condensed about 1 week's worth of work into it. And when I compiled all the video I had shot of this project, it ran for 2 hours straight. I say this mostly to point out that this sort of thing takes time. If you want to try your hand at a T-Trak module, do not rush yourself and do not feel like you have to get it done right now. Enjoy the journey. Speaking of the journey, the question becomes, what now? Well, for now the module has just been a learning experience for me. But if the opportunity arises to add this module to a T-Trak layout, I might just go for it. I'm certainly going to look further into the world of T-Trak. I think my journey with T-Trak has just begun, and hopefully for someone out there, yours too will soon begin. Stay safe out there, and whether you take it on in big pieces or small, enjoy the world's greatest hobby.